So, 20,000 subscribers. 20,000 subscribers. It's a little bit like calculating areas in square meters. I mean, that just doesn't compute. I don't really have the words for this. 20,000 subscribers just over 18 months after I started this channel from absolutely nothing, from a standing start. I'm literally speechless. Thank you, everybody. Welcome, everybody, if you're new here. Thank you for joining in. If you've been here for a long time, thank you for your patience. I literally can't get my head around how many people 20,000 is. Apparently, it's the capacity of the O2 Arena here in London, maximum capacity of 20,000. That's the second largest indoor arena in Britain. The next largest is the Manchester Arena with 21,000. So that'll be next month probably. I mean, I'm speechless about this. I'm absolutely knocked out by it. It's absolutely fantastic, and thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for being here and making this sort of little YouTube community what it is. It's absolutely brilliant. When I did my 18-month roundup a few weeks ago, I said that this was probably going to happen, you know, towards the end of May, beginning of June, and it certainly has. And I threw the comments section open to questions. Ask me anything, and I'll give you answers to them. I'm going to go through some of those questions now. With answers for you, which I hope you'll find interesting. First one up is from the Bearded Artisan. Congratulations on your 18 months. Love your channel. Thank you very much for that. I have a question. I'm considering starting out doing handyman jobs in my area on a part-time basis in addition to the day job. What do you think would be a good place to start with regards to a few specific tools for that type of work? Any essentials or must-haves? Great question. One of the difficult things that certainly I found, and I think Andy, my podcast co-host, found as well, is that when you're doing handyman stuff, you're doing little bits of everything. So it's really hard to spread the budget around to get really nice bits of gear because you've got to have so many little bits and pieces. I think one of the things that I'd suggest is, assuming you've got the basics covered, so you need a combi drill, so a drill driver, hammer drill. If you can afford it, have a little, perhaps a 10.8 volt drill driver as well, so you're not constantly switching between screwdriver and drill bits. That's really good. What else? You need a decent set of screwdrivers, a couple of long ones, because you're always going to need to get into sort of tight, awkward spaces. A good level of some kind, doesn't have to be digital, just a good basic level, and make sure that it is level, you know, get that calibrated somehow. You need a good selection of little odds and ends, fixings, all those kind of little bits that you kind of normally you'd put together over time. That's one of the hard things when you're first starting out. Plus, of course, you need something to put them in and keep them all together. I'd actually spend a bit of money investing in making life easier for yourself. One of the first things I did, one of the big differences, one of the things that made a big difference to me, I'll get my words right eventually, is that I standardized on this particular type of toolbox, the Festool Sustainers, because you can keep all your gear separate, but it all clips together and it's easy to roll around on a wheelie base. Doesn't have to be one of those. I think they're particularly good because you can then separate them out in case you need to carry the whole thing upstairs. There are other toolboxes. I know there's a Stanley one, which is on wheels and has a pull-out handle, and you can also kneel on it to cut things. But that kind of thing is going to make your life much easier because you can move your gear around more easily, more readily. And what else? If you've got the money for it, a small vacuum cleaner. It doesn't. I've got a Festool one. Doesn't have to be one of those. I think Shepak make a small, sort of fairly self-contained little vacuum. Again, the handyman business, you don't have to be that good to be successful in it, because there's always that kind of work needed, and as long as you can turn up on time and more or less speak English, you're mostly ahead of the pack. In all honesty, tidying up after yourself goes just as far as doing a decent job. So maintaining a tidy workspace, clearing up after yourself, having a happy disposition, because nobody wants a miserable grouch to come up to their door and be in their home doing work, and maybe also look a bit smarter, look a bit more professional. So maybe some proper workwear, decent pair of work trousers and a polo shirt or something, rather than the pair of scruffy old jeans. Just because you're doing manual work doesn't mean you have to turn up looking like a tramp. That would be my advice. Spend your money wisely, but spend some of it on making your life easier. Next question came from Ray Masterson. He says, my question is, a one-man band who does most of their joinery out of a van because I'm yet without a workshop. Have I got any tips looking for suitable workspace to rent? He says he struggles to find anything that isn't huge and industrial. He's in Ireland, but he's sure it's the same idea across the water. Yeah, absolutely, Ray. It's incredibly hard to find small workspaces. They're like hen's teeth or rocking horse, whatever. You either find they're sort of single garages with no water, no waste, maybe electricity, but they don't really want people in there doing sort of industrial type work, or they're not particularly good in terms of security. You wouldn't want to keep all your gear in there, for example, or they're 1,000 square foot light industrial units at 10 grand a year sort of thing. All I can suggest, obviously I found my place because I live right opposite, and there happened to be this space available when I was looking for somewhere, and it happened to be at a particularly good price. I know I put the actual prices in my cost of doing business video for my Patreon supporters, and obviously I let my podcast co-host Andy Mack take a look as well. And he said, I pay $4,000 a year in rent for this place, and I know that is very cheap. Anyway, it's very cheap for London, where again these sort of spaces are almost virtually impossible to find. But Andy has got the same problem exactly. He's working out of 2/3 of his garage at home, and yet there's no sort of 400-500 square foot, 40-45 square meters workspaces, workshops around. They're either sort of 800, 1,000 square feet, with prices to match. All I can say is keep your ear to the ground. If you spot a little sort of area where they're lightly looking workspaces, knock on a few doors, ask around, see if anybody knows of any that are coming up empty. Find out who the landlord is. There may be a common landlord for that little patch, that little area. Try and contact them and see if they've got anything else that might be suitable. Generally speaking, avoid estate agents if you can, because obviously they apply their fees on top of everything else. Best of luck with that. I know I've never had to work out of the back of my van, and I'm really glad I didn't have to, because it's hard work. It's one thing if you set yourself up to have a mobile workshop, but it's something else if your van's just relatively small and you just need to crack on and do the work, and having to work in the street alongside your van is no fun at all. So best of luck with that, Ray. And if anybody knows of any workspaces that are available, give me a shout out. Ray doesn't say where he is exactly in Ireland, but if you know of anywhere or anybody who could help, give us a shout out in the comments, and we'll see if we can help Ray out. Next up, Matthew Whiteley says, my question is selfish and quite specific. Fair enough, Matthew. I'm about to attempt to build my new kitchen from scratch, and I'm trying to decide on the carcass material. I'm thinking veneered MDF or plywood. There's something in me that wants to avoid MFC. If you were doing it, what would you use? I've got to be honest, and I've answered this Matthew's question in the comments because it felt it needed to be answered sooner rather than later. I've got to be honest, if I was doing it, I would use the internet and I would buy them. Making kitchen cabinets is factory work. You can do it in a small workshop. Even though I'm reasonably well set up for it with my Festool MFT to do repeat cuts, It's you know, there's no joy in making those sort of cabinets and carcasses. They have to be made very accurately. I would spend my time making some nice doors and end panels and doing the twiddly bits, to be honest. If you have to make them yourself, yeah, my choice would be, again, I don't have a phobia about MFC. I've fitted a few kitchens from mid-range to relatively high-end, and they're all MFC. You can get different degrees of MFC, of course, different quality at different prices. If you don't want to use MFC, then I would go for a veneered MDF of some kind, or melamine faced MDF. Yeah, you know, plywood if you want to, but MDF is perfectly serviceable for this kind of work. But yes, I would absolutely be buying them in. From Adrian Brewer, the next question. Hi Adrian. From moving from a pro photographer to carpenter, apart from your handyman work, did you take any carpentry courses that helped you on the way, or are you self-taught? Adrian says, I'm looking for things to step me up a peg or two over the next year. I'm entirely self-taught, Adrian, learning by doing, basically. I was handy. I was aiming for a career in woodwork of some kind when I was at school, and then at 16 I got sort of diverted. My attention was taken away by doing photography, and I ended up going to art school and doing a degree in photography, film and television, and not coming back onto the tools for 20 years. But yes, and I'm entirely self-taught, learning by doing and watching YouTube, not necessarily to find out how it's done. Sometimes it's to find out how you shouldn't do it. And really there's no better lesson for you than making an expensive mistake at your expense. It's a mistake you're never going to make again. So no, I'm entirely self-taught. I don't know of any particular carpentry courses that would help you. Depends entirely on what you want to do and what you're trying to achieve, of course. So yeah, best of luck finding something, and I hope that helps you. Question from Stuart Morgan, again on the pro photographer track. Stuart says, I know you used to be a pro photographer, so Nikon or Canon? The answer may affect my viewing, he says. Okay, Stuart, well, the answer may affect a few people's viewing. In short, I mostly used a large format camera called a Sinar. It's a Swiss camera. Looks a bit like the old school cameras where you have to have a dark cloth over your head to see an image that's upside down and back to front on a ground glass screen. You use film in sheet holders, and you shot one sheet of film at a time. They were either 10 by 8 inches or 5 by 4 inches in size, so big pieces of film. If I needed something lighter weight and portable, I had a Mamiya RZ67, which again, lightweight and portable is a relative thing. This is a big old lump, and you would never ever want to try and handhold it. To be perfectly blunt, those little 35mm SLRs didn't get a look in for the kind of work that I did. I've owned both Nikon and Canon personally, although I never use them professionally. These days I'm using Panasonic with Olympus lenses, so you know, a bit of a mongrel all round, and I hope you continue to watch, Stuart, and I hope that answers your question. Cole Collins says, are you from the north? Yep, born in Liverpool, lived there till I was 18, came to London, that was 48 years ago, no, 40 years ago, I'm 58, so yeah, 40 years ago, so I've been in London since then. Damien G says, question related to the videos are, what were the hardest things and lessons you learned in getting your content out on YouTube? What worked really well, and what would you have done differently? Great question. The content, I've got to say, I found to be relatively easy. I've got no shortage of ideas for videos. It's a question of finding the time to do them. So putting the content up onto YouTube is fairly easy, fairly straightforward. Getting people to watch it is much, much harder. My first video was about the Festool CTL Sys vacuum, which was new then. That's video number -001. It's still on the channel if you want to have a look at that. I made that. I got 40 subscribers on the strength of that one video alone. I don't know if any of them are still with me, but I appreciate your patience and your fortitude if you still are. It took me 6 months to do another video, to put another video up on YouTube, and that was still around the same to do with the CTL Sys, and then it took me another 6 months again to do the next video in the series, video number 001, which was the shaker style panel doors in MDF with loose tenons. I guess lessons learned, you need to be consistent and you need to be regular, but more regular than 6 months between your videos if you want to go anywhere with it. Pay attention to absolutely everything on the videos. You've got to pay attention to the thumbnails, you've got to pay attention to the graphics, to how the text looks, to make sure it's readable and legible. You've got to pay attention to the editing. One of the best things I found is to watch television, not to watch the program content, but to see how TV shows are constructed. We have, I wouldn't say the best, but let's say some of the least worst television shows on British television. Just pay attention to them, watch how they're edited, watch how often the camera angle changes to try and keep your interest and maintain some pace. You see all kinds of things on YouTube that you just never ever see on TV. One of my personal bugbears is what they call a jump cut. Jump cut is an edit where you get somebody like this talking to the camera, so a piece to camera, and what they do is, because you're losing track of what you're saying, or because you're doing a longer piece to camera, you do it 2 or 3 times and then you edit all together afterwards with just a jump, just a cut between the various pieces, and then you chop it up together, and then you discover that you've got little changes in the scene or where your body is positioned, and that makes for an awkward viewing experience. That's one of my personal pet hates. I know you see it an awful lot on YouTube videos. I'm not going to name names because it happens to an awful lot with some very prominent YouTubers as well. Sometimes you can get away with it if you're extremely static and it doesn't really matter too much, but you've really got to be careful with it. I do go to absurd lengths to avoid it. I did have a year at film school, and it was very much frowned upon to do jump cuts. And again, it's the kind of thing you very rarely see on TV, almost never in a studio setting. It's usually an interviewee who isn't a broadcaster, isn't a presenter, perhaps is giving a longer answer, and they actually need to chop that up. Often what they do is they cut away to the interviewer nodding and doing the looking earnest and interested, and that's usually to hide where the break is, where the edit is in the other person. What worked really well and what would I have done differently? Things to do differently, I would have paid much more attention to the branding of the channel. I started off posting videos under my own name, and then the 10-minute workshop idea came along, and yet I had a reasonable following, a few thousand people subscribing to the channel under my own name, so I didn't want to change it and risk losing them. I got around that by having the 10-minute workshop.tv domain, and I used that as a way of forwarding potential viewers to my YouTube space. With the benefit of hindsight, setting up the channel as 10-minute workshop TV would have been better to start with, although 10-minute workshop came along much later. When I was considering changing to a brand, it was actually, I'd made the decision to call it 5-minute workshop, sharp, snappy, to the point, 5-minute videos, and then I discovered that I couldn't make a 5-minute video to save my life, so I called it 10-minute workshop. But by then we'd got a few thousand subscribers, and I didn't want to lose potentially lose them by changing names. So that, yeah, I would have paid more attention to the branding, and I probably would have done the track saw videos sooner. I'd actually bought the Titan track saw in the Christmas sale from Screwfix, so only a couple of months after I started the channel, and it took me another 6 months, what do you know, before I actually got that video together. If I'd have known how successful it was going to be, I'd have done it sooner. I had an idea that it was going to be pretty successful, it was going to be a popular video, but I had a slight moral dilemma in that I thought maybe it was because I'd bought the Titan track saw, it was almost like I was buying views. So I felt a little bit uncomfortable about doing that. I don't feel uncomfortable at all about doing that now. Those sort of moral dilemmas are long gone, so yeah, whatever. But it would have been I may well have been in a different position now had I done that video sooner. But there we are, it is what it is, and it was what it was. Last question from Ryan Askew is, can we have an outtakes bloopers video? Well, I'll have to see if I can find some, Ryan, but to be perfectly honest, I don't make many mistakes, at least not on camera. So we'll have to see. We'll have to wait for that one. Thank you very much indeed for all those questions. I hope you were satisfied with the answers. I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, give it a thumbs up, share it freely, and do consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. Or hey, just check back on a Friday when there's always something new up at noon. What do you reckon, 30,000 by Christmas? Let's give it a try. I'll see you then. Take care.